the internal void, which is in our memories, creates like an actor without a script. Like I'm creating right now, I keep forgetting things. I had a plan, I had a whole plan to tell you, but I keep forgetting, and hence I have to improvise. This is what the mind is constantly doing. It's filling in the gaps, no? It's filling in the gaps, and of course the metaphor of the void is eternal. It's eternal. It's one of the, speaking once again of the limitations, of the limited number of metaphors that they have been in humanity. The metaphor of the void is an extremely predominant one. Mallarmé called it silence, right? And silence was for Mallarmé, it was pure being, it was pure essence. It was the possibility of creating the purest kind of experience, a mystical experience. No? The existentialists call it the absurd. The void is the absurd. No? You fall into the absurd and you flow forever, and you disappear into the absurd because the world becomes incomprehensible on the face of the void. I think that the metaphor right now for all of us, even for Americans who are so conscientious in keeping up your memories, no? Even for you, that the metaphor, the key metaphor, is indeed amnesia. And what amnesia does, of course, is that it centers a number of associations. What are those associations? One is what I call the last object, el objeto perdido, l'objet perdu. No, Duchamp, as you know, many of you know from painting, spoke of the found object. Now he will grab this and put it upside down, like that, and that will be a found object. Or you would grab something even more insulting to the bourgeoisie, or that he called the bourgeoisie, and a urinal, for example, and turn it a little ways, and then horrify our grandparents with this kind of image. No, so the found object all of a sudden invaded everyone's homes. I met a man in Pennsylvania as I was ambling around the country, and he was a very serious man, as some Pennsylvanians tend to be. You know, they were hardworking, but with a very serious demeanor about them, rather foreboding. Huge man with a large beard, and he was the manager in the hotel. And my wife had come with me, and we had stopped at night because we were exhausted, and we were going through one of the radioactive towns in your country, which is Hershey, I believe it's called, right next to 3 Mile Island. It was soon thereafter, and we stopped in this town, and this man, as I said, it was late, it was twilight, and with the twilight he even looked more somber, the man. Now I looked around and I saw some wooden nickels on the wall, and I said, oh, those are lovely. And all of a sudden he smiled, and he said, I happen to have the greatest collection of wooden nickels in all of the United States. So he took us to a room, and it was like a museum. He had every wooden nickel you can imagine, in every tone, every color. You know, it was marvelous to see how much pride this man had in doing that. Now I met a young fellow who was even more enterprising. He had the greatest collection of diamond tops, because he thought that in about 10 years, those diamond tops are going to be worth a fortune. You see? The Danone yogurt tops, Danone. And so, you see the collectivism that we go into, we're like pack rats. Like pack rats, the more we're threatened by the possibility of the disappearing of memory, the more we try to preserve the kind of a nostalgic reminders of a certain past. Like, you know, like the little cartoons of the 1950s bring tears to our eyes. Not because they're fantastic, but because they're associated with a certain period in our life, with a certain nostalgic feeling that things were really great and really wonderful when we were that age, and because things were really better and we were cooler than these little bums hanging around and you know, singing these hideous songs like David Bowie. I mean, who can stand that stuff? I mean, but the Beatles, you know, and stuff like that, that was marvelous. So it's this kind of constantly shifting, this kind of constantly coloring of memory that goes on, collectively and individually. Now, I mentioned the word fabulation, which is a Spanish word literally, but it's much more stronger than your weakening word, which is fabling. which will be the correct translation. Fabling is the process of creating a fable, a self-deception, whether a self-deception or a mere fable, a story which is not real, told as though it were true. You know, fabulation is the word that I've chosen because it seems stronger to express something positive. So what I'm speaking about here is that amnesia always has been seen as a negative phenomenon. It has always been seen as something to be shunned. I found only 2 references in the history of mankind that really point to a positive aspect of amnesia. One of them is Heidegger, who says that amnesia or forgetfulness, the word amnesia doesn't crop up. Forgetfulness is a positive entity in itself. It is the feeling of having been. You see, even though you've forgotten what you've forgotten, there's still the feeling that you have been someplace, and that has happened. If you're a king and you don't remember your king, you're not really a king, are you? In your mind. But the other person that mentioned something positive about forgetfulness in a passing little passage, in a small passage, was Giorgio de Chirico. Giorgio de Chirico, I think, is close to what I'm trying to express in some of his painting. Giorgio de Chirico said in a beautiful little passage, he said, imagine if you walk into a room, you see a birdcage, you see bookshelves full of books, you see tiles on the floor, and imagine if for a moment those links of memory are broken. With what horror, with what joy, with what marvel will you view that room all of a sudden? Of course, you know, once again, I'm not speaking about traumatic amnesia, I'm not speaking about psychological amnesia. I'm speaking about the metaphor of the amnesia as a poetic and philosophic metaphor. Okay, so these works of art then are fabulations, the fablings. The stories told us that they were true. Now, I wish I had some examples here to show you the kind of paintings that I've done along these lines. But I'll describe one. There's a painter who won the National Endowment for the Arts. This group of painters associated with the notion, by the way, come from many countries. Argentina, Bolivia, there's a man from the Pompidou Center in France. There are several Americans, and so forth. This American, Jose Rodero, of Spanish extraction, he creates these fabulations, these kind of blends of history and fiction. He represents, for example, the jet setters in this place called Marbella. How many of you are familiar with Marbella? Marbella is this spot, the hot spot of the jet setters, and this is ruled by King Midas, this enormous guy who sells weapons to make his living, and whose love ends is loved by everyone, because we respect weapons, right? We don't respect some other things, but we do respect weapons. His name is Khashoggi. So Khashoggi rules in Marbella. He buys the police. He literally has the whole police for himself. And kings and princesses come dressed as king, and those that are destitute now, they come rehearse in a kind of a mock rehearsal of what they used to be to the parties of Khashoggi. They come with a little powdered wigs from the 18th century and so forth. And Khashoggi, of course, doles out the sweets, you know. In any case, Rodero represents the jet setters. He represents 16th century intellectuals mixed with 72 million years of history, which includes also like dinosaurs, because face it, dinosaurs are already half invented. We're constantly revising them. No, they didn't really have that tail. The tail wasn't that long. No, the arm really was behind. No, it wasn't in the front. So literally, we're living in a web of fact and fiction. Fact and fiction. Imagine how exciting. It gives you total license. Amnesia, before amnesia, is an open canvas. It's an empty canvas upon which you can create whatever fable you want to create.